Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Final Cut virtual user group number 6. I'm Alex Lindsay, of course. And we're back. We figured out that we might want to do one of these again. Steve Martin, as usual. We've got, you're coming up from Flagstaff, is that right?
Prescott,
Prescott.
Arizona.
We just had some guys driving through with the gear in Prescott. It's not really the right accent, but coming in from Mill Valley, is that right?
Like
Spencer.
Mill Valley. Yep.
Yeah.
Sam Messman, where are you coming
Los
in?
Angeles.
Los Angeles. And Alex Goldner, I think he wins for
Distance.
furthest away.
Yes, I come from Zone 2, Northwest, London, or London Zone 2, Northwest. I'm from the future.
Otherwise known as Alex 4D,
Exactly.
as most people know him.
Yes.
He's here with us. So thank you so much for coming out. And of course, you came out, and all of you, well, you guys come every time, but it was a little easier this Monday. And why we had it this Monday, of course, was that there was a big event, right?
There certainly
was.
was, yes.
Yeah.
But we can't talk about it.
The Final Cut Pro 10 Summit.
The summit, okay.
Yes, the summit.
The first
San
annual
Jose.
summit.
First.
Yeah, are we just going to say that? So Jeff Greenberg, if you're watching, this is the first annual summit, which means there will be a second annual summit.
Just laid the gauntlet
Well,
right
we
down.
wanted-
That's all I got to say.
that's good because we're saying it was great. We had a outstanding time. I mean, we all taught sessions there, but we just got to meet great people and had great sessions. And it was all the good stuff at NAB without any of the bad stuff.
Now, what would you say is the good stuff of NAB?
Meeting people, seeing
Right.
people, interacting with them, learning a lot of stuff, having great conversations. I mean, we had all that with no casinos and no cigarette smoke and no walking miles and miles.
In the same hotel, is walking miles and miles while you're
In the
still
same place,
in
yeah,
the
without
LVH
ever
or
seeing
the
the
Hilton
sun,
or whatever they're
right,
calling it today.
without ever seeing the sun.
Yeah,
So it was great, really, really fun.
I was very jealous. We had a big build this weekend. I couldn't go.
Ah.
I was like, all my friends are down
Yeah,
there.
we missed you. Yeah.
No, it was
It's
good.
been a part of an amazing Final Cut Pro 10 tour for me.
Oh, really?
Yes, it started on Wednesday in Los Angeles at the Lasipug meet. And then on Friday, during the day, I was at the FCP 10 Summit. I don't know, FCPX Summit, Creative Summit, what are we going to call it? 2015, because it's the 2015 one, not the 2016 one, which we're all preparing for right now, of course. And then in the evening, I was presenting at the Super Meetup, which is actually completely amazing, interviewing Randy Ubilos. And then I was teaching on the Saturday and today, MacBreak Weekly recordings. Sorry if I kind of spoiled that. I'm allowed to talk about that. And also being on the VUG or VUG or Virtual User Group. It's a shocker.
He did more things in a single week than I've actually done ever.
And the great news is I just never have to come back here ever again.
Well,
No,
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 the
no,
problem
no.
is
No.
that we're going to start bringing you in all the time. We're like, hey, come on back. We're doing another one. So.
Oh, yes, please.
Very good. So, of course, as always, you can check out, you can ask questions, vote on questions, all on Hazu. And we've already got questions. We put this up a little while ago, and people just started putting questions up and voting on questions and everything else. If you are watching us on YouTube, you'll see down below, you'll actually see a link to where you can go to ask questions and vote on questions. So if you somehow found your way to YouTube rather than to the event, that's where you can go to do that. So join us, ask questions, vote the questions up and down. In fact, we'll start with one here. So the first one here is from Vid Price, and he said, "What do you think is the next stage of FCP10's development?" Question.
All right. My opinion is that, I think you saw with the beginning of 3D text, sort of imagination sort of coming back into feature editions, which is like 3D text is something that, I think people kind of swept under the rug because they didn't really understand it. But if you look back over...
By the way, I'd like to point out that the countdown clock for this show, I felt like if Final Cut, I can't the last time I did it and I had a little trouble rendering, it was taking a little too long, and so I rendered it this time. I don't even know what I did differently, but it worked great, and But it is a great tool. I mean, the 3D text is and I'm speaking as a 3D artist. It works
And it
really
performs. You know, that's the thing. It's so simple to just use it, and I'm sure there are better tools out there in terms of like to do really in depth, but for 95% of what you'd ever need to do, you know, it's.
Well, I mean, the first thing, like, because I'm a pretty heavy user of like Pro Animator, and there's a lot of things in there, obviously, that I would use, that I would use it for. But the first thing you always do when you have Pro Animator, when you show someone, you put their name in, and then it just pops up. And now you can do that in Final Cut, where you just, and I was talking to a client who made something that was in 2D, and I said, that really could have been 3D, and it's not even that hard. It's built into Final Cut, so.
And then if you do it in motion, you can also have that 3D text be on a floor with reflections and shadows and a light and a camera running around it.
Yeah.
And just a little bit more work.
Yeah.
So it's pretty sweet.
I mean, the interesting thing about it is it's a kind of like it's a strange choice, though. Hey, 3D text is great, and we hopefully people will use it enough, but not too much to it to be a cliche. But it's really, really cool. Sometimes 3D text is really good when it's really thin, and strangely enough, it's actually been used to slightly color and affect something. You don't actually know it's 3D text because it's actually
just
being
gives
used.
it substance. Like
Yeah,
you
a
just
little
make it just a little thicker, just to give it a little substance.
Well, and the materials too, because I, for the longest time, has been my biggest thing. Is like, well, how do I make that gold thing that's on the screen, or how do I make this feel like chrome or metallic, or any of those other things? And now I know there's just a button for that, as opposed to trying to figure out how to do the gradient or whatever I need to do.
Right.
I hit the thing, and I'm going to get the material, and like, okay, we're good. Let's move forward.
But it seems to me that the 3D text is really to say that Final Cut Pro 10.2, the update was about speed.
Right.
Which is strange for an app that nobody complained was that slow. I mean, obviously people have problems. It sometimes is slow, but generally, if people don't say, the thing about Final Cut Pro 10 is it's really slow. People never say that. They never say that. In practice, in terms of workflow, it's incredibly fast. So why is Apple spending time making it fast? It seems to me that 10.2 marks the end. To steal something from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, 10.2 marks the end of Phase 1.
Right.
It's got a kind of feature completeness kind of feel to it, and now we can add this feature like 3D text to show, okay, we're adding things that aren't necessarily part of the whole big arc that's leading into the future in terms of Pro or wherever it's going. It's actually saying, okay, we're taking a breath, and now we're doing other things that people would like that doesn't necessarily fit into the the main story.
And I think things that could distinguish it. I mean, I think that you look at Final Cut. When people say, well, why should I use this other than, why do you use it other than Premiere or other than Avid or whatever? Number one is I don't like timelines anymore. I look back on it like I go back into timelines. And I'm like, oh, this just drives me crazy. And number two is that it's just a lot faster. The workflow is just for us, time is money. Got to move things quickly. And but 3D text is one of those things that you pay a lot more to have it as a separate application or to do something else, and now you just that's just something we just can throw in.
One thing we were conjecturing on before the show started related to where Final Cut is going is talking about the very robust ecosystem of third-party applications that have come up, plugins that extend the functionality of it. And we were talking about Lock and Load and SliceX and TrackX and Color Finale and some of these other apps, and the new app that Cormel came out with, DriveX, and kind of conjecturing on the line between where you have third-party developers come up with additional functionality and where will Apple take some of that functionality and integrate it.
And I think that you have to, as someone who developed for Final Cut and Motion for a long time, we and we may go back to that at some point, but we really looked at Apple may take away our plugin at any moment, and we would definitely release things generally right after Final Cut. We'd watch to see what the next release was. It's a little harder now because we always knew it was going to happen about once a year in the old days.
Yeah, a little faster.
Right before NAB, we would, see some big update. But for a long time, what actually paid the bills for DV Garage for a long time was the fact that the keyer in Final Cut 7 was so horrible, just absolutely useless. And so that, but me having a keyer that wasn't very expensive, that did a pretty good job, was just kind of printed money. And so I was in no hurry to fix that for them, But once they fixed it, obviously demand dropped a lot, And I think that, but we saw that. We couldn't believe it took that long. So I think for a lot of developers, they have to kind of go in, eyes wide open. Either you're going to make something so complex that Apple's not, and so I think, vertical towards some market that Apple doesn't really want, or you're going to make it quickly and know that it may get absorbed if it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And I think that's generally for any Mac development because Apple builds its own stuff.
Well, and it happens to Apple too, to be perfectly honest. I mean, take a look at DaVinci Resolve, you know.
Right.
So it goes both ways.
It happens to everyone. I mean, unless, you know, that's the bottom line. When you're doing that development, you have to figure out what's going to distinguish you after someone does something that's similar.
But I think phase 1 was get it to a certain stage. Phase 2 could be about the ecosystem. I mean, I could think it could be much more about the ecosystem. It could be the ecosystem about established folks like you guys, but it also could be about having an app store built into the Pro App Store. And then what is the Pro App Store? And you either in Motion or in Compressor. What happens is you have individual one-man bands or one-woman bands saying, "Oh, I've got a really good compression codec. You know, if you want to have this compression preset, 49 cents." And then via the Apple App Store and your Apple ID, which we've all got anyway, they distribute it. So you'll actually, if Apple's about ecosystems, it could be really about ecosystems. It could be about any of you people, as well as creating videos. You could be creating content, clip video, audio, tutorials, and it's all actually available for within Final Cut.
Well, and like, for instance, I mean, we've thought about this a lot, for that part, but having it be able to have a setting in Final Cut that said that show me all the available plugins, and so you just see them all grayed out, and you can just literally, I mean, it could be as easy as right-clicking on them and ordering them, paying for them right in the app.
I mean, that's exactly what FX Factory does right now, right? It's a separate app, but you see all this list of plugins. You choose which ones you want to turn on. You buy them within there.
Yep.
You decide, and you manage them all in there. But that could be actually integrated into the app itself.
Well, Adobe's kind of doing that with their Creative Cloud 2015. There's a whole stock universe built inside where you can like go order stock footage within there, right through the app.
And Avid as well, with the Avid Marketplace. It's a really cool, powerful thing, because if you're an editor, you've got a problem to solve. But you can even have a grader. You just say, hey, available for grading, send me 5 sample clips from your timeline. I'll grade just those clips, and if you match those clips.
Well, and if you look at, like,
interesting idea.
I don't know if you've seen Fiverr. I know we're kind of going all over the place, but have you seen Fiverr? So Fiverr, Fiverr, like I just
2 R's.
2 R's.
That's ridiculous.
Fiverr. But I have to. Well, I'm testing it right now because I got some ad on Facebook that said you can have a cartoon, and we have all these headshots that we do that are very specific in our company. And I thought, well, I wonder what it would look like if one of those headshots was a kind of like a pop art, So I went up there, and for it's everything's supposed to be $5, but then they have all these little add-ons. So by the time I added everything on, it's like $42 or something to have a pop art made of my head, which isn't done yet. It's supposed to be done in the next week or something like that. But the point is there's all this stuff. They do motion graphics. They do all this other. They do, but they also do like business advice. I don't really know how that works, but it's all these guys in Romania and
Business
Pakistan.
advice
It's
costs
basically
$5.
like Mechanical Turk for everything else, And anyway, the point is that if you look at that kind of economy, we get back into being able to have more and more of that tied into the apps, whether it's the Creative Cloud or Final Cut. I think it's more likely to happen in the Creative Cloud than in the Final Cut. It really starts to reduce all that friction, and I don't think it needs to be. It doesn't have to always be someone in Romania or in India or whatever. I mean, I think it can be someone who's, there's people who can do some of that for you. Because there's a lot of things that I want to do, like countdown clocks. I make a lot of countdown clocks. And so, I'd love to pay someone to do a countdown clock as opposed to...
I can show you how to do a 3D countdown clock in Final Cut.
I know how to do a 3D. I know one way to do a 3D countdown clock, but I would love for you to show me how to do one. To see if I'm doing it right. Because my way is the way we built the one that. See, I don't usually give tips, but and I won't do it here because I can't do it. I don't know what's in here.
You can't drive.
I can drive the actual app.
You can.
But what I did is I went into Motion, and I set the timer. I built the little time code, and then I made it 3D because I guess the time code one that I had in here was not 3D. The time code here wasn't 3D, so I couldn't turn it on. So I swore a little bit, and then I went into Motion, and then I rotated it kind of the way I'd want it. I didn't need to do that, and then I just published a whole bunch of controls that I wanted for it, and then I brought that into Final Cut, created a new little section called 3D, my own 3D countdown clocks or whatever, because I'm sure I'll add a bunch of stuff to it. Then I put it into the timeline, but you can't reverse it because it's a 3D active element or something. I don't know. I couldn't reverse it, so then I compound clipped it and then reversed it.
There you go.
Yep.
You the fact that you were able to it makes sense if you compound clip and reverse it, that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Compound clips are the bomb.
They solve a lot of
When in doubt.
Yeah, when in doubt, compound clip.
Compound
Yeah.
clip, just compound clip.
Well,
It's a new T-shirt, I think.
When in
coming,
doubt, compound
Yeah.
clip.
Like we have guys we've had editors that we've worked with that'll have they'll be cutting and pasting their settings for one camera angle, and I'm like, because it came in 3 clips or something like that, and I'm like, put them together and then we compound clip them and then we correct them
everything
from there.
at once.
Yeah, let's not.
Yeah.
Although Sam points out that when doing stuffs on the server and you need to transfer things, compound clips and multicam clips can be quite dangerous with work groups and stuff like that.
Okay, so we can go down this road.
I was like, you asked for it.
One tip that I would recommend if you need to pass multicam and compound clips between editors, and you intend to pass them back and forth repeatedly, which means that you're going to send it out and you want to retain them and match frame so that you go to the correct compound clip. Because of the way the structure of these multicam and compound clips work, the only way to do this successfully is to use the copy and move event commands to make sure that your events are identical from editor to editor, and then take either a project that you want to pass that has compound clips in it and option drag that into its own event, and then you can move that to another library that has those same compound clips. Otherwise, it's going to create new ones.
It's going to create new
from every
affiliates
project,
in the
and then when you pass it back, it's going to create another
one,
set of
another.
clones, and then another set of clones, and another set of clones, and you have no idea which one you're actually referencing.
Yeah.
So there's one way to do that, and there is no other way to do this. And you can there is another way, which is to duplicate the library in the Finder every time for another editor. But if you want to pass stuff, just make sure you put the project alone by itself and send it to another library that has identical events based on what those clips are.
Very good. There's a key tip there. So, yeah, but yeah. So anyway, that was my little figuring out how to do that. And a lot of it is I felt like I had to do the 3D text. I felt like that was something we had to do. All right. So we've answered one question, kind of.
Kind of.
We're going to come back. If you have there's a whole bunch of questions in here. There's a lot of people here. So we will, got a lot of viewers, a lot of questions. We're going to come back to the questions between each tip. So if you've got questions, or if you see them here and you want to vote on some, go ahead and vote on them. But we're going to go, who's first? Who's there first?
I can go first. If
Excellent.
All right. Yeah. Okay. I don't have the library open at the moment, so I'm going to see if I can open the library. Should have opened it beforehand. I apologize. So maybe I'll still locate it. Alex G. Sounds like me. Cool. Okay. This is hasn't worked so well. So.
Maybe you didn't consolidate first.
Exactly. So I can't consolidate. I need to go to the file menu. This is not the tip. This is just me getting it wrong.
But this will be useful for somebody.
Exactly. I want to relink these files. So relink, there's the original files. I want to locate all of these files. And I gave the fantastic folder name called footage. Relink files. There you go. Now here's the story.
You made a story.
No, this isn't the story.
Okay.
What this is a series of clips. I shot them with my iPhone over the...
Before you start, can you click off of the event and back on it? Because I notice in the event browser there's still a red missing thing. It drives me crazy. And
Yeah.
then it,
No,
and it keeps-
it's
it
true.
keeps-
No, you have
Definitely,
to click
definitely
through
red.
another.
And the exclamation points are still on the event, the little badge. And
Oh.
sometimes you have to
If you click
Yeah.
to another event, sometimes it will
and
go
click
away.
back again. Yeah.
Okay.
There we
Oh.
go.
Well,
Decided.
that's my solution. Decided.
When you have an
Otherwise, Mark, let's talk about definitely.
That's what I do when I have an oil light in my car. I just put a piece of tape over
Yeah.
it.
That fixes the
All of us have a little
Sweep it under
OCD.
the
There's
rug.
always something we're OCD about.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you put the tape over the...
I'd say there's a lot of things that I'm OCD about.
If you put the tape over that light, that changes the oil, right? That's what happens.
It does.
Yeah, it's magic. So this is a few shots that I shot using my iPhone, using that Instagram app. What's it called? The time-lapse app. But it's
Hyperlapse?
Hyperlapse. But you can do it at 1x, which means it actually smooths the shots pretty well. So you can use it as a kind of steady, as a smooth cam that's built into your iPhone. So these are just a series of shots or stills. And what I'm saying is it is possible. Oh,
Look at how it ended.
Denying.
well, I never. So I was saying that it is a good idea to use the placeholder. Now, the placeholder people forget about. And the great thing about the placeholder, I'm going to press E to put the placeholder at the end, is in the setting. I'm just going to see, my phone is actually, I apologize, this is very embarrassing. Sorry about that, I have to acknowledge this. This is live, folks, it's live, I apologize. So, in the placeholder, if you want to do storyboarding, you can choose in the settings, you can say how many people you've got in your placeholder, if it's a long shot, a medium long shot, or a close-up, right? But the thing is that, say for example, you want to plan a video and you have some stills or some video, what you can do is you can use this placeholder in conjunction with video. What you do in the generator is you change the background to, well, what are these, to none? Where's
It's
none?
there, it's
there it
there.
is, it is none. Yeah, so none, and we'll make the background, the sky, none. And now when I put this placeholder over somewhere, over this clip here, here we
I
are.
didn't know you could do that. That's cool.
Exactly. So what I've got now is I've got these people and I can position them. They're a bit tall. They're like, say, okay, we're going to hire some monster tall folk here or something like that. And you just go into the other tab, turn on the transform, and here we are. We can scale them down, keyframe them, put them wherever we want, and we can plan our video.
Okay, this is ridiculous because we spent so much time on a previous user group talking about how we build backgrounds in motion
Yeah.
and all of this
Yeah.
stuff. And Alex,
I
2
just, I'm
seconds.
not, my, like,
None,
I
yeah.
don't know, I'm floored, but I didn't even know this was in there.
Yeah,
The
you
little
can turn it
nun.
off.
That is
None.
fantastic.
So you can have 2 people, or you could have, so you could have 2 people and choose, or you can have, if you want to have a close-up and you want to plan, you know, your
This is
shots.
fantastic.
This is awesome.
That's my tip.
That's
That-
it. That's
So combine
Well
this,
done, sir. Well done.
combine this with the tip you did in the other user group where we just opened this placeholder in motion and published the ability to control the position of each of those people separately, so you could move them apart or keyframe them to move a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you've got,
Can you change them? Can you change their outlines or what the pictures are?
technically you could just change this into drop zones and put other content in.
Right. Because you could have like the people that you could have like little.
Oh, absolutely. You could
Like
you could,
cutouts
you
of
could
the
have their
people.
heads.
That's great.
In fact, what you could do is have a drop zone for each of these heads and have each of your talents in each, and you could show, okay, we're going to do a shot reverse shot, and this is what it'll look like, and this is the environment.
and even if you're planning out a live show or something, you know, you could go now with location photos and shoot those and place the people. And
Which is,
figure out
he's got
exactly-
locations right now. This is next year's Final Cut Pro 10 Creative Summit. He's,
Yeah.
he's
Hint,
right at the
hint.
he's right at the convention center here.
This is fantastic.
That's great.
Very cool.
Fantastic. All right. Next set of questions here. Are you ready? And we'll move through them fairly quickly. Our next question here is from Thomas Carter, and it is what can you tell us about what happened during the Apple presentation at the Final Cut Creative Summit?
It was great.
You can tell us it's great.
Next question.
All right. There we go. That's what we can tell you. All right, fine. Sorry, you didn't go. You didn't go. That's what happens when you don't go. I didn't go. I don't know. I have any idea what happened there. What can you guys tell us about? No, never mind. All right. So
They didn't walk out with everlasting gobstoppers.
next one. What are you most excited about Final Cut 10 after being at the summit?
After being at the summit,
Yeah, this is from T. Payton.
Oh, hey T. Well, at least for me, I think the coolest thing is, you know, I think seeing, I think, how international this community is, and you know, I think maybe part of the reason why it's not as huge in LA is because it's so like large everywhere else. I mean, all of the people that came in, like I would say, it's probably 50% international that was there at the summit this week, which is, I think, a really good sign for the app and the community at large that this is pretty much happening all over the world as opposed to just one city.
Well, I guess I kind of feel like it's happening everywhere except for San Francisco, LA, and New York. like it's kind of like everywhere else. There's like this groundswell of people using it and everything else that I see all the time. And what's funny is it's kind of like everyone's kind of like they don't talk about it that much. I guess it got so much trouble in the early days that people don't talk.
Well, and a lot
that
of the
much about
editors in LA are using it at home because they're afraid to bring it into work.
Right.
And then so the echo chamber of professionals or whatever that means is, you know, like, well, I don't know anyone who's using it, but No,
They-
half the people that were there were international, so people all over the world are using it.
And I suppose the funny thing is they do know people are actually using it, but they don't know that those people are using it because they're doing it in their free time. I mean, what I actually suggest avid editors to do when I get into conversation with them is that if during the day you're doing a drama, then edit at night a music video, or vice versa. So if you edit a different kind of thing, then you don't really expect to be working the same as you do during the day. So I actually strongly suggest that I like to find different ways to suggest people to really get into it. And if they think, oh, I'm in this mode where I'm doing drama and I need to do some drama, then I'm frustrated when I'm doing my short in the evening. But if you say, no, I'm doing a documentary in Final Cut, whereas during the day I'm doing something else, and I think that kind of helps. But in London, I think the thing is that, again, Final Cut Pro is a kind of secret thing that people generally do and they don't know when to talk about, and it's seen as being unprofessional.
Right.
I use the P word, of course, which is a famous word to do with Final Cut Pro. But yeah, it's that kind of, is it professional? Can I really talk about it or not? So yeah, I think it's for people, some people say they don't know any better, that's why they use it, which is a terrible way of looking at it. But in other words, they don't know what the standard operating procedure is. They go to the Apple store, they use it, and they just use it. They don't know what the orthodoxy is. But yeah. But as regards what the Summit makes me feel, it's interesting, the Apple seem to be really focusing on the pro side, really on the high-end TV features, high-end commercials and stuff like that. But what cheered me up about the event is that Apple people were there. You know, you could tell there was an Apple person because they never said what their surname was or where they came from. Hi, I'm John. And you go, John? Yeah, I'm John. And you go, okay, I get the message. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, I think I understand.
I think they should have just said Agent Smith myself.
So, but the fact they were in
The truth is
sessions,
out there.
you know, and they were moving from session to session in our rooms and stuff like that while we were teaching and talking to people in conversations. You know, I don't recognize it. I've only seen photographs of one person from the Apple team. Never met any of them before, so I don't know. And then I get the impression, oh, maybe they are from Apple. That's really, you know, and what cheesed me about the Summit was that hopefully when they review what happened in the coming week, the sky didn't fall.
Right.
You know, it turned out okay. People didn't tweet anything horrible or blog anything or make a YouTube video complaining about anything. Or whatever it happens to be. All the people attended had a good time. Maybe the people who weren't there were irritated that there weren't any recordings of anything, all that kind of stuff. But at least they can just poke their head out from under the parapet, and it's actually turned out to be okay. Maybe they'll do a little bit more and it'll be all right. That's the thing I'm looking forward to. The fact that hopefully the fallout, you know, who knows when the fallout's going to happen, but maybe there's no fallout. It'll turn out to be okay.
That's great. Okay, one more question before we move to Sam. All right, so I'm warning you, Sam.
No.
One more question before we go to
Heads
Sam.
up.
So see how that's the other. Just letting you know that was kind of a hint.
No,
that
continue on.
Alex
Carry on.
set us on a pace of going counterclockwise. All right, so so the next question is coming in from Austin Flack in Los Angeles. Do you think multiple editors, same project collaboration, a la Media Composer, is in the cards for Final Cut 10? Any ideas on how they might or should implement it, perhaps as an online service like Avid Interplay or Adobe Anywhere?
Is the heart of the question that Final Cut 10 doesn't work in a collaborative environment?
Well, and it sounds like, I mean, Interplay and Anywhere, that kind of, that doesn't, it's not just collaborative, right? That's multiple, like you can be multiple locations.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of collaborative editing, I can work collaboratively with multiple editors on the same network. In fact, I have hardware that does exactly that. In terms of can you have the same library open? No. Would we all like to see that? Yes. Is Apple aware of the problem? Yes.
Over and over again. Yes.
So, you know, in fact, like, I guess, no, it does not currently work exactly the way Avid works. Can I cut a project or a feature or work in a collaborative way very efficiently, very quickly with original media, 4K, 6K, and do all of these things right in Final Cut 10 and past projects and deliver movies? Absolutely, you can do this. I've given them demo often. So I guess for me, I have a bit of a problem with, like, no, it is not perfect. But if I spent all the time pointing out Avid's imperfections, we would have just as long, if not longer, a list. So for me, can I work effectively in a collaborative environment? Yes. Can this be better? Sure. But so can a lot of things, I guess.
And go right now to fcp.co, where there's the article about the
Yes.
television company that have 200 employees pumping out 300 hours a year of content, Final Cut Pro 10, all working collaboratively to produce it, and it's very long and detailed of their
And a
whole
big
workflow.
shout out to Ronnie Currens, who is pretty much one of the smartest guys in the Final Cut 10 world, and really is one of the few people who really understands how to make Final Cut work in a collaborative environment, and that's over an NFS share, and that's really the key to all of it if you want to be on a network. So if you know what you're doing and you're doing it correctly, you can very much make a happy collaborative atmosphere using Final Cut 10. And they proved that actually in that article. So fcp.co and Peter Wiggins and Ronnie Curtins pretty much thoroughly ended in that question or debate.
But UI-wise, I kind of like the idea of what would we want? Because we don't necessarily want a bin locking. We don't want event locking, or the idea of locking an event and having it. The equivalent would be locking an event. So they say you can't look at this event or modify this event because another editor's working on it. This would be our equivalent metaphor if we were just going to have the equivalent from Avid. The way that Apple works is instead of, the iPhone didn't have a copy and paste for a long time, but then when they did it properly, maybe not the way that people expected. And the idea maybe collaborative editing won't be the way people expected. So I like the idea of we're working on a timeline, and I'm working with a series of clips or a compound clip, and it says, somebody else is already working with this compound clip at the moment. Do you want to create an audition for your one?
Sure.
So the timeline is still active. Then you're working away on the compound clip, and meanwhile they're working away on the compound clip, but it's just an audition on the master timeline that somebody else is working with. So that's shared on the timeline, and that means the master editor can move that compound clip and would put it wherever they want, while other editors are working on two versions. And then what happens is somebody reviews, I think I'll go for this version or this version. So this is, let's wait and do it properly, is also that aspect of it. And then when the UI supports actual conversations that are creativity based, as opposed to what could be done in Avid in 1995, which is what bin locking kind of is. Let's actually move it forward to the 21st century and work out what new kind of collaboration is, as opposed to copying a kind of collaboration which you could do 20 years ago.
You can open another window and have FaceTime.
Yeah. Wow, FaceTime. That'd be. You could actually. Then you could play somebody else's video through FaceTime. I wish we had that in a version of Final Cut.
Sam.
Now, actually, to continue this conversation, it actually was a nice segue, that question, to be honest, because I'm about to talk about a new application that was just released, which enables kind of a new level of collaboration with Final Cut 10. And if you think about it, and you really extrapolate some of this, could potentially be used for something like Proxy or Adobe Anywhere style editing if you needed to do it, if you did it in a certain way. And it's called Frame.io. And basically what this is kind of an elegant, I call it like an elegant video Dropbox, I guess would be the best way to term it, which is, it is a nice collaboration and review system that works with anything, but especially well with Final Cut 10. And so I guess my tip is going to be to demo some of that integration. And what I've done here, and actually I'm going to switch this over to Proxy. Mark, these are not offline. I did some Proxy stuff. There it is.
I can't stand those exclamation points, man.
He really hates
I will hunt down and kill whatever it is that's causing that. It has nothing to do with my
Definitely got the
project.
That's funny. Search and destroy.
Here, you know what? Only when I turn the video on, we'll go. They're gone for now.
God, so much better. Thank you.
So basically, I've talked a lot about shot notes and sync and link and this workflow. And what this does is, if you're on set, you could literally do this in a way where you could bring in your footage, use shot notes and a Google Doc template that your camera team or script supervisor is filling out to get all of your metadata, match that up with an XML, take that XML, run that through sync and link, apply, have it batch sync all of your clips. This takes about 10 minutes. And you get what we have here, which is a series of events that have kind of come in from Final Cut from Shot Notes and Sync and Link. And now I'm going to flip this over to Proxy. And we have, these are 4K red clips, which are now named named after the clip name and take name and using the metadata that gets embedded. So this is pretty much automatic from Shot Notes. And now what I've really wanted to do is get these uploaded in a way as daily so I can get back to work editing, and that's kind of what Frame.io sort of allows. And so I've got scene 119 here, and I'm just going to push E to shoot these all into a timeline. And now I have 4 clips, and I'm just going to, make them all a little bit shorter to specify for an easier upload, even though I'm not going to upload them right here. But I might shorten these, and I'm going to add a couple markers. And it's batch export has been an issue for Final Cut 10 that Frame.io largely solves. And when you download Frame.io, which is on the App Store now, they just released a companion app for Final Cut 10. It's going to install a couple presets in the share menu here. So there's frame.io H.264 and frame.io source. And source will allow you to upload ProRes itself. So whatever your resolution or codec, that's what's going to upload to Frame.io. And you purchase a certain amount of storage. So depending on how much storage is, you could review full res cuts, past masters, whatever you needed to do. But the one that I think is going to be most useful on the daily side is Frame.io H.264. So I hit that share setting, and it doesn't really matter in this scenario what I call it here, but the important thing is going into the settings. So right now, if you notice, the resolution is set to 4096 by 2304. Not exactly how people are probably going to want to review these on the internet. I'd probably want something far smaller to post for people to check out, producers, etc. So the key thing that you need to know is when you go into format, come down to web hosting. So when you hit the Format tab and you come down to web hosting, now you can control your resolution. And I'm going to move that down to 854 by 480. And I can specify either a faster encode or something that's a little better quality. And now I'm ready to hit OK. And that's going to take me to the Frame.io app. It's automatically, when you go to that destination, it's automatically going to bring you to Frame.io. If you've already signed in, I've signed in here. Now I can specify whether I want to export the timeline as a single clip, or it would also export a range. If I had a range selected in the timeline, it would send that range out. So I could send a scene, I could send a reel up if I wanted that for review. But in this scenario, I'm doing dailies. So instead, I'm going to deselect timeline, select clips, and it's going to give me 2 options here, which is to either discard disabled clips or export only the clips I have with markers. So when I export the clips with markers, those markers that I put in the timeline would then be the clips that would shoot up, and those would be then available for download or review. In this scenario, I'm actually not going to upload anything, but I will select a project that I could theoretically upload to, which is Feature Dailies. So I would then hit this, I would hit upload. I'm not going to do that right now, but I would then go, this would immediately export from Final Cut in individual source clips and shoot this up into the cloud so that when you got there, it would look like this. I would go into my Feature Dailies project in Frame.io that lives here, and I now have 4 clips, and these are the 4 clips from my timeline where, I can add a folder. So I could theoretically, and I'd call this scene 119, and now I can shift select these clips and just drag them right in here. And now I have scene 119 dailies where I can double click in here. And now if I double click on a clip, it's going to open up this window where I can immediately watch this down. But what I can also do is annotate and add comments and features. So one thing is, if I wanted to, for instance, remove head, I could do that. And basically you see the comment pop up right on the side, and then I can jump ahead to something and type in fix, and you can quickly add and jump immediately to and from these comments, and You can also download this, and so I can immediately download this clip, and I can also step back in and add collaborators to come see this particular project or folder. It's extremely useful, and it's a far more elegant way of delivering dailies than a simple Dropbox link or folder, and this is a far better way for people to come in, and not only that, but it enables batch export right out of Final Cut 10 with metadata that you specify, so you don't need to rename any of these clips. They're going to be named how you've already named them for the daily side. So what it really means is you can have dailies going pretty much within 15 minutes of downloading your footage on set, so that by the time you're done for the day, you can just start editing. And so for me, this is far more efficient than the traditional way that we've been doing stuff.
And by the way, Emery Wells, one of the founders of Frame.io, one of the first hosts for MacBreak. So he's been involved a long time. And I have to admit, Emery's been talking to me about this for a long time. So it's really I'm glad to see that it finally got to the surface.
And when you say batch export, can you actually select multiple projects? And is that what you mean? Or just mean batch
what you
export
can
a batch
do
of
is you can
clips?
queue up, so you can put as many clips as you want. So you could have all the clips come in, and you can either set markers to specify which clips are going to go in, and then you can set a queue and have them go to different projects.
Okay.
So it literally just, once you understand the limitations, then you figure out how to make it do what you want.
Okay.
And you can queue up the exports in an order as well. So it's the same way as anything else, where you can do one timeline and that's going up in the background, and do another
And
timeline
done
and that's
on the
going
next
up in
one.
the background,
Yeah.
and on and upwards.
And really the whole being able to draw, comment, that type of thing just really solves a lot of issues quickly.
I think it's fabulous. I mean, we could use it in
I
our
was
tutorial
already
review
thinking
process.
I could totally use this for.
Because right now I'm reviewing a bunch of movies, and
using
I'm
a
writing out
spreadsheet.
notes on
It's like
a
add
text
this
file.
frame, do this,
And I'm writing, I look at the time code, I'm typing in the time code, I'm saying there, and then they're going to look up and they could just click on, oh, I see what you're talking about. I mean,
We're
Yeah.
gonna. I see us using it almost instantaneously
Yeah.
when we get back for our workflow.
I mean,
like tomorrow.
Tomorrow, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I hope in a future version, of course, with version 1, you have to make the minimal viable version, but a future version which gets that metadata back into Final Cut Pro, like some sort of overlay, in which imagine if you went to the overlay and you went to a special marker that actually said, okay, here's the sketch that the person drew and the text they wrote, and it just appeared back in a marker back on your timeline, or that kind of stuff.
So
in
that's
which it
what you were
becomes
saying of a
tighter.
collaboration that's smarter.
Yes,
you know,
that kind of thing, in which real things that real changes people want to make and their feedback can actually appear to the editor, and they don't have to think about how it appeared there. Just off they go.
Well, and an interesting thing about all that too is talking about a proxy workflow. Well, this is basically video Dropbox. So if you shot up your dailies that were in a proxy editable format, you can actually reconnect as long as the names are the same to things. So there's a lot of ways that you can use this, because you can download full res files, you can download all kinds of things. So these can live in a lot of different ways, I guess is my point.
Well,
That's great.
I'll just quickly say one more thing. In the case of you could be using 35mm film. You can getting a video tap off the actual off the monitor and get that start editing away in Final Cut, and you can be sending that off, and you can instantly start working. And then once it's developed and then transcode, and then you get your dailies back, you could replace each clip.
Right.
So this would actually work in inaccessible places, and people just reassuring people, making sure the workflow is working, and because clients only know what they don't want when they see it. Oh, I definitely don't want that. And then you've got a chance to actually change it. So this kind of collaboration stuff, especially if the kind of people who will cause problems later by changing their mind, get them to change their mind as soon as possible. That's very important.
That's great. Question from Mads Larson Nielsen, and his question here is: do you believe Avid and/or Premiere will hit a wall in their old code, which would simply prevent them from pushing the bar any higher?
They already have. So, for instance, I want to see the demo where in Premiere you can play 16 streams of 4K. I can do that in Final Cut. You cannot do that because of the code. So they need to update that code at a certain point. You literally cannot play 16 streams of 4K at better quality in Premiere, or even really at 1/8. And so, yes, it's 4K capable, but how 4K capable is it? And as we get higher in resolution, you'll start seeing some of the chinks in the armor the higher up you go. So I've tried this test actually. So I actually know for a fact that I can do this in Final Cut. I can't do it in Premiere. I'm pretty much positive I can't do it in Avid. But like that's where as we start hitting higher resolutions in media, this is where you start seeing the limitations of legacy code, and we're already starting to see it in some of the apps.
Well, and we're starting to deal with, right now we're doing more and more spherical production. So both stereo and spherical and stereo spherical, and in all of those things, the resolutions that we start working at are getting to be absurd. So because right now
you can preview in Final Cut VR. There's a plugin to preview VR in Final Cut now. Dashwood.
Know that. Who makes the plugin?
Tim Dashwood.
What?
Tim Dashwood makes the plugin for Final Cut where you can play back your VR as you're doing it and see it in 360.
Okay.
Yeah, he just demoed
You
that.
like, you like that, Alex?
I like that because we don't do that now. Now we export and then we put it.
No, you can
run
watch
through.
it right in there. You can't do the stitching, but you can watch it. You can.
No,
watch
we can do
video.
the stitch. The stitching is a whole process on its own. But but yeah. But at that minimum resolution is 4K. And really where we're going is 6 to 8K. 6 to 8K is going to be the resolution, because you have to remember that when you're putting those goggles on, you're looking at one little small section of something that's going all the way around you.
At a higher frame rate too, right?
Yeah. So the holy grail right now for spherical is 90 frames a second at 90 frames a second at 8K is kind of what everyone's trying to get our head around. Like, from a
Pardon the pun.
what?
Get your head around, or get
Yeah,
get
well,
its head
get-
around, right? Yeah.
Do you know the megabytes?
Yeah, get it around your head. Actually,
Right.
yeah.
Do you know the megabytes a second required for that?
Well, it depends on how you're compressing it. Because one of the interesting things about that is that a lot of times when you're doing it all the way around, when you're not moving the camera, it actually is a lot of times it's actually less bandwidth than you would have with a regular like what really crushes bandwidth is a handheld camera that it's not on a steady cam. Just like that. All the pixels are changing all the time. The funny thing you get into is we have. So we not only do we do production for it, we also do live streaming for headsets, and we were kind of surprised at the bandwidth that we could get away with, where it wasn't super high bandwidth, and it still looks great. But part of that is that now we once again we're capped at 4K because our encoder just barely could do 30 frames a second at 4K. So it's a big lift, to do that. And so, but anyway, so it's actually not that bad though, But the big thing is that, those other apps. I think that we're going to find as we start going down that path that Final Cut may be the thing that you want to edit your spherical stuff. Especially, I have to check out that preview. It's going to make life a lot easier
Dashwood.
for me because I have to edit a piece next week. Actually, it's all in.
Oh, yeah. You're gonna like it.
Excellent.
Because I got the impression with Avid, though, that they are actually trying to make them more resolution independent, at least with their workflow. So they've got a limited amount of R&D given the amount of output and how many clients they've got. If you think about how many
Right.
people are actually paying for Avid versus how many customers there are, how can they have more than a certain amount of R&D? So they're concentrating on the right thing, which is different resolutions. So yeah, you need. So I thought 4K is silly to me, but suddenly I'm dealing with hemispheric, equilinear things that are 16,000 pixels by 8,000 pixels, and you need it.
Yep.
But at least you only need 30 or 40 megabytes per frame, and you only need those frames 1 or 2 times a second, effectively. If you see what I mean,
Well,
because you're
Yep.
turning. Yeah.
What's interesting though is if you look at the next spec for Thunderbolt, it's basically 40 gig Ethernet. And we've got 40 gig Ethernet currently running to the desktop, and this is where you start needing 4K DPX, OpenEXR, and all of that stuff, and that's what you're building for on the VFX side. But it'd be interesting with Thunderbolt 3 if that was able to come to the Mac side, and that seems to be the direction that it's all going to be headed, which would then allow for basically the things that you're talking about, which is going, we hit 2,500 megabytes a second. I can deliver that to the client. The question is, what do you need it for? And that's,
Right, and that's I think that's going to be an interesting process, and whether these other applications really manage that well, I think is going to be difficult because they're just, and it's a situation where you can't think of. We do a lot of code, even the question and answer stuff that we have here. When we work on that, you can't think of everything right when you first start. and we've rewritten this a couple times to, just completely like, okay, everything we thought was we're going to throw away, and because we're in the early days where you can do that. But once you start building a big app, and now there's 1 million lines. Once you get to 1 million lines of code, you're kind of like, this is the way we're going to live for the next certain amount of time. And then the hard decision becomes, is the market big enough to continue down that path? Like, is it big enough to keep on doing that? Are we making enough from Adobe's perspective or from Avid's perspective? Avid probably yes. Adobe, I mean, they've obviously made a big push into this, but is there a point where they either have to do a complete rewrite? And what I think Apple did was when they did that rewrite, they just said, we're not going to have all those features, right now. We're gonna have it on, a much more modern architecture. So I think that it does give them kind of, in the long term, I think this is definitely a long play. All right, so Mark.
So I'm going to shift gears about 180 degrees from that conversation, and talk a little bit about a simple way to take the 3D text stuff that we've been talking about earlier and just add a little bling to it.
We love bling. For this for this section, we should have gotten you some big gold chains, big gold chains and Evan's tooth,
Overlaying a big kind of ding.
So I'm gonna use 2 free products from Ripple to do this. Although it's a free effect that we have as a plugin. It'll work on any 3D text, including the built-in 3D text. So right now I'm looking at the built-in in the titles browser. I'm looking at the built-in 3D titles, but I'm actually going to intentionally use Ripple 3D Animations, which is another free set of titles, 3D titles. And just if people don't already have these, I have to just go to FX Factory, install FX Factory, and 3D title animations are a free download. So I'm going to throw that into the project, and I'm just going to play. I'm just going to select it. It's not selectable. Interesting. Oh, there it goes. And play it. And in the inspector, I'm just going to change this to tumble the characters. And what I want to do to this, I'm not going to talk about modifying all the parameters. Lots you can do in here. But what I want to do is add kind of some glow, some bling to this. And it turns out in Motion there is a filter called Glint that works great on 3D text, but it doesn't exist in Final Cut Pro. And you can certainly publish that, but we've done that and done a few things to it as a free plugin, because it's we didn't add a lot to it. It's just we took the process out of it, so you can just do it. So on Ripple's site, this is Ripple's site, in the plugin page, you can scroll down on the plugin page to the Glint and grab that. When you do, in Final Cut, if you go to your effects browser, you're going to see in the custom category RT Glint. So I'll drop that on here, and it's out of control by default.
It's like Star Trek.
Yeah. Now, what's kind of you're going to use all 3 of these, 3 of the 4 different tabs in the inspector for this, because if we go to the video inspector, we have the effect, and I'm just going to reduce the exposure on that. There's some other useful things in here that you can play with, like the glow amount, and if I scroll down a little bit, the intensity has a big impact on it. And just doing that alone can get you pretty far along, where we've got, if the text is moving, you see it expose a very nice kind of glint, something that looks pretty darn good without doing a lot of work to it. You can take it a little further, though, because if your text isn't moving and you'd like a light pass, basically, to go across it, and we've done this in many ways in the past with masks and interesting things, keyframes. But here, we're going to use the capability, the fact that this text exists in an environment. There's an environment that is mapped onto this text. So the reason I used this Super Rotate, the Ripple 3D, is because for Super Rotate, if we go to the title inspector and scroll down, we've published environmental rotation. And because we've published that, it means it's keyframeable. Okay, and that's why I'm using that. So if I scroll in Y here, if I just scrub through that, we can see that light moving across the text.
It's nice, isn't it?
In different ways.
We're all like, oh, that's so hard.
So, to do, I could just choose a starting point. I'll just go to the beginning of the clip and I'll set a keyframe for that and go to the end. And I could be a little more precise about this, but just to give an idea about how this might work, I'll just do that, press the / key, and it comes in and now has an animated light that passes through. I didn't do quite enough on there. Let me crank it up a little higher, go a little further with it. Let's see. Oh, I still didn't go even high. Still didn't go high enough, so I'm going from 98. Let's shoot this way negative. There,
you
so
go.
I
There
have
you
light
go.
passing across it.
There you go.
Yeah. So a pretty easy way to add
There's a
some
lot of
bling
bling.
to with like two little free products in there that can add to any 3D text you use.
That's great.
That's it. Short and sweet.
And those are great. And I just have to say that bling is a lot better than, I would almost say the effect that will not be named, but we will say it just once. Lens flares. This is not lens flares. This
Yeah.
is highlights, it's bling, no lens flares.
And it's highly. I didn't go into all the
Ways you
let
can
people
modify
play
it.
with it. It's highly modifiable. You can really tweak it to your liking.
And I'm not saying that lens flares are never used when you have a good light source and you're trying to reproduce something and it looks good and everything else. And I'm not talking about bigger flares that you might see. I mean, even like the Star Trek stuff, you can decide whether you like that or not in effect. I'm talking about just grabbing a lens flare and sticking it on your eye and like moving it around or whatever, or
Yeah,
turning it
yeah,
on
yeah.
with the little things in the thing.
Overused.
No. So anyway, this is great. This is great. Okay, next couple questions as Steve warms up here. It says David. Let's see here. David Del Real says, "Okay, I vote for Alex. We don't know which Alex. I'm guessing, I'm guessing it's you." It says, "I vote for Alex to make a plugin for color-coded roles. Tired of waiting for Apple."
Color,
Oh,
I'm afraid neither Mark nor I could make a plugin that does that, given the way that the plugin system works in Final Cut Pro. But hey, maybe with Phase 2 and
Yeah.
the ecosystem, maybe Apple will
Yeah.
give us more hooks.
All right. Next question. We're going to try to go through a couple of these here. The next question here is from VidPrice again. What system do you use for client feedback? Frame.io, Dropbox, Hightail, or the like? And the winner is, I think, Frame.io,
Yeah.
and all of the rest of us are about to do Frame.io. Does that sound about
Yes.
right?
Yes,
I'm,
we
I'm,
are.
I'm afraid I am really still using Hightail to send things to people and back again because of the corporate. Sometimes it's like a corporate video to a charity or something like that, and they just find this, even web browsing or going to certain websites, it's hard. But
So we use Hightail for some of our clients to hand them something. We use Dropbox internally to just move lots and lots of big files back and forth, but I can definitely see us using Frame.io for review cycles and so on and so forth.
at least I'm not making too many more WMVs like I was up until quite
and-
strangely recently.
I think there's specific use cases for all of them,
Yep.
to be perfectly honest, which is like Frame.io is clearly for media. And
Yeah,
like,
I mean, for Dropbox, it's like everything we want to move
Yeah.
back and forth. And we've got, I don't know, in our company, we've got 15 terabytes or something like that of storage. So you just kind of move things, you just put huge delivery files and so on and so forth up there. But I think Frame.io for all the, for media, for review.
and when you send it to a client, it just looks way better. Quite honestly, it looks like you really know what you're doing
Right.
if you send them the Frame.io link as opposed to here's the Dropbox folder.
Here's your little link.
Yeah.
No, I'm sold. Okay, one more question here. Actually, we got a couple more. The next question is from T. Payton again. What new thing did you learn at the summit you wish every Final Cut user knew? Go to the summit.
well, a lot of us taught at the summit.
Right.
But I relearned how cool Motion is. I've been doing a lot of updating tutorials and working on plugins, and this was a chance I taught Motion, as did Alex. I taught like 5 classes, so I had like 9 hours of teaching Motion, and it was a joy. I haven't done that in a while, and I discover stuff while I'm teaching. I don't know if you do too. Just like have interactive with everybody in the class, and it was so much fun. And I was like, I want to go here. So it's a deep app, and there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do, especially now that you can make so many things with 3D.
Right.
I by actually preparing for my sessions and saying, behaviors, I actually understood so much more about behaviors in a general sense. Because the thing about it is you can go down rabbit holes in Motion. But I thought, how could we make it into a place that is a friendly, not intense environment? Because you first open it and you think, okay, no, I just can't handle that, which is just the nature of Motion. So I was in there and I'm perfectly, and I think I found the key to actually making it a safe environment. And then I was just trying everything, and it seemed to work, and nothing seemed to go wrong, and which is very strange. You know, you have to have somebody else tell you, look, you can't break the app by trying everything. It'll be okay. So weirdly enough, I learned that for myself, which is not much use. It's not what I learned from somebody else. Although Patrick Inhofer's stuff to do with the Resolve round tripping was absolutely fantastic, and Sam's stuff about the different kinds of network kind of connections and what makes collaboration work in Final Cut Pro 10 is. Anyway, that was fantastic.
and actually, to actually bring it back to motion, Mark, you probably should just show this in motion the replicator with the 3D text object as the center of it, you know, and kind of the thing you were doing with the gears and all that.
Yeah, I'll do there's a MacBreak Studio will be coming out on those.
Already done. Keep an eye out,
Yeah.
I guess.
Already
for
sorted.
me, this is like I was saying with Mark, I was teaching a lot of classes, and I was teaching one in particular on media management and collaboration, and I'm always a little surprised how those classes are still packed. There's still a little bit of, I don't quite get this whole external library, managed library, consolidate, it's symlinks, hard links. It's still a little, nebulous for people. And I found that even people who've been using it are like, there's like a light bulb that goes on. So it's just, Final Cut's media management scenario, its paradigm is so radically different than everyone else's. And once you understand it, I think it's really, really powerful. But I just think I found that there's people, even continued users, experienced users, are still running into.
And I think that's the
issues.
case. I think that's the case for a lot of Final Cut, which is that you have to stop trying to make it do the way Final Cut 7 worked, or we say this every show at some point. You know, it's not going to work the way Final Cut 7 works. It does not work the way Avid works. It does not work the way Premiere works. It works in its own way. And when you give up all of that stuff, and you come over to how to the dark side, Final Cut 7 being the dark side, because I walk into some of these production houses and I'm just like, really, you guys are still using that? Like, that hasn't been updated in years. Like, what is wrong with you? Anyway, so I'm just saying, if you're still using Final Cut 7. What is wrong with you? All right, I'm going to move on. All right, so next, one more answer here. Do you think that some tools that are now provided from third parties should be part of Final Cut 10, like better color tools, tracking, etc.? I like the ecosystem model, but I would like to have more standard features like those in Final Cut 10. And this is from Leo Hans.
Well, I mean, if we want to vote for external things that appear in Final Cut, the Zeotrope plugins, in terms of being able to do or effectively recreate that Soundtrack Pro thing about ambient noise print and have that built in, because obviously Apple did listen to the Europeans and said, okay, you want MXF, we'll buy the technology from somewhere else and we're going to build it in. So the plugin that software that cost hundreds of dollars, it's suddenly now built in. So yeah, I vote for D-Reverb. Imagine having that.
D-Reverb is like a magic tool. It's so magical.
I have a lot of those plugins. We do a lot of stuff where I have to clean that stuff up, and it has. There's another one that I use as well. There's two plugins. Isotrope is one of the ones that I use, and I use another one. But both of them, being able to pull that out. I had a what?
What's the other one?
It is, yeah. Seems like, well, what is the other one? What else is better? Because the Isotrope is really good. I just got to pull up my. I can't remember the name.
I'm sorry.
I think it's I want to say Synaptic.
Okay.
But it is. Those tools. I mean, I do wish that Apple would go on a buying spree sometimes and just kind of like suck those guys in, and just make them part of the.
I don't know if they can afford it though.
Apple. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I was like, yeah, I know. They are. Every month we are like watching this. It's kind of like the
We
death
should have
spiral and
Taylor
seeing
Swift should write an open letter to Apple about the missing plugins in Final
Oh,
Cut.
that's what we should do. We should petition Taylor
And then
Swift
Taylor would,
to
and
say,
then it would just
Apple,
totally happen.
you're really letting the Final Cut users down. We need to see all the buy these plugins. That would be so awesome. I'll have to find it here. I'll jump back in a non sequitur and tell you what it is. I just have to figure out.
Steve could do his tip while you're doing that.
Yeah, Steve, you do the tip and then I'll bring it up. But anyway, yeah. But those kind of plugins are just by the way, if you're going to invest in plugins, in my opinion, the first one's to get a course of Ripple training. Get the RT plugins. But the sound plugins, like there is nothing. Sound is the thing in most of these projects, and the thing that I have to clean up the most is our sound issues. You get a low recording, you've got reverb, you've got noise, you've got buzz, you've got birds, you've got all these other things, and there are some great tools out there too. Now I have to admit that I take most of my heavy cleanup. Okay, now I'm going to say something bad. So I give Premiere a hard time, but I still clean up I do my heavy cleanup in Audition. So
there's good tools in Audition.
Audition's really good. It's faster. Yeah. So if you're going to deal with it, I take that track, and I'll take it out and put it in Audition, and then I'll clean it up there because it's just faster. The same tools are there. I mean, the same tool plugins that I'm using, but they all run faster. They're all easier to work with, and then I bring it all back in cleaned up. It's not, it's just I don't think that the Apple tools manage audio very quickly. I think that's the thing that's kind of painful.
So would you transfer for that with XTCC? How would you get that from Final Cut?
See, we all want to sound like we're really techie. I open the clip that has a problem and and then I go in and I swap it back. I swap it out.
Okay, I thought
there's nothing.
There's a timeline.
There's no special thing in there. I go, oh, that clip has a problem, and I'm going to clean it up before I start editing.
Cool.
I have to admit that there's a lot of people that are very more techie than I am related to it. I am like I'm superstitious and old-fashioned and weird about how I edit, and I know this will sound crazy. I do very, very complex edits, but they're not artistic. They're many, many, many layers that are all integrated in time, and they're all stacked on each other and everything else. And so for me, like I can literally bring Final. I have to send it. Someone told me I should send it to Apple.
Picture the timeline.
I have things that will bring. That I've learned to do that if I'm not careful, that just literally brings Final Cut to a point where you like move it and then you go have a coffee and then you move it again and you go have a coffee and it's but that's so to do that a lot of times I don't like to do anything that I'm taking things in and out. I'm very superstitious. Like everything is conformed. So I still the old-fashioned. All my footage gets conformed before it goes in. So I decide what the format's going to be and it's all going to be that. And if it's not anything, if it's 30 versus 2997, it will be converted, before it goes in. If it's 720p and a 10, like all that stuff gets all like I decide what that platform's going to be and everything gets pushed into it, and I do find that it runs a little smoother. That's not that it can't do it. It's just that's So just because I'm just and my thing is just because I'm superstitious doesn't mean it doesn't make it better. So anyway, I'll find that plugin, and while I'm doing that, Steve will give you a good tip.
Yep. This actually wasn't my tip. It's from one of our customers from Chicago. His name's Anders, and Anders Utterstrom. I don't think he's a native, but I could be wrong. But he's in Chicago, and he's great. And he emails, hey, you should do a show on this. You should do this tip. And this is his. And I started playing with it, and I thought, I'll use this. This is something I think a lot of people would use. Like, whether you're on a shoot, a production, you go to stock footage sites. Sometimes you need a piece of stock because you don't want to, have the time or money to shoot it.
Like I say, stock footage is the key to the operation. I mean, like that is like the secret to everything you see all the time when you're watching all those blog posts with a cool image. That's all stock photography.
Most it is.
It's
cheaper to shoot. Or cheaper
you got to do the math. You got to do the math. Like, how much does it cost me to have this image? We get stock images. We get stock vector. We get stock 3D models.
I think the whole microstock phenomenon that started about 10, 15 years ago is huge now. The artists that are creating it might tell you that a different story because they feel like, they're not getting paid for their work, and there's just there's a glut of it out there now.
I only know a handful of people that are making stock photography, and they make more money than I do.
Well, I'd like we should. I would love to.
I don't make that much, but I'm just saying that they don't. I'm not. It's not like I get paid that much, but I mean, so maybe it's not. But I just know they're making a lot of money.
It's a numbers game, and
they know exactly what they're shooting. They have a vertical that they understand. They know that those people that's what they want, and they shoot lots of it. It's not a creative endeavor as much as it is. It's a business.
And one of the largest stock sites, of course, is Pond 5. And I like the fact that you can go up there and buy a really nice, you can buy 4K, you can buy 2K, what have you. And I mean, here's a perfect example of this timeline. some stuff that we a few years ago we shot some time lapse, some of that tilt shift look. So look, there's Union Square all miniature.
I love that.
I know it's all miniature. And let's say, for example, I needed another shot of Golden Gate Bridge, but of course I'm not going to fly my drone over the Golden Gate Bridge.
And that was probably shot with a helicopter.
Yeah,
which
that
would
looks
be,
like a helicopter, exactly.
That's I can tell you in San Francisco that's $8,000 a day.
I'm sure that is. Point is, that particular stock I did a search for, and on Pond Fighter, and of course there's lots of really good stuff up there. And a lot of times you're using stock if you're on a television show or documentary. You have to keep track of where it came from. I mean, I might use Pond 5, I might use, I don't know, iStock Photo, I might use Envato. All of these stock sites out there, and if I'm using a lot of it, I got to keep track of where it is. I don't know. I know I just cut this in. I wanted to see if it worked. You know, at the end of the day, like, this needs to be replaced with the high-res version. In fact, most of these sites allow you to download the preview versions that include the watermark. And you're not going to see the whole Golden Gate Bridge here because it's cut off because of the resolution. But bottom line is, this is the stock that I downloaded a preview from, and then I just go up here and I'll just select and then copy the URL, and this is just fantastic. And I'm going to go down here into the timeline and press Command-Shift-2 to open up the timeline index. And I'm going to park my playhead over the clip. And what that does is, in the timeline index, hopefully I can make this bigger than it is notice that in the notes section of that particular timeline index, you can paste the URL for that stock footage. So you can paste all these URLs, and this is fantastic because later you're working, I don't want to write down this long, you know, whatever this 5-10 digit string is, and a lot of time doesn't even take you to the right clip. So I just find you can just post it right here, and then if you right click on this or control click, you'll notice that there's an option for opening the URL. So you just go like this, and it takes you right to the site, and it brings you right to the clip, and you are right there.
All
I
of
can't
us are
tell
like,
you with audio, because the audio is harder to find. Like, I'll download all
yeah.
these audio sample clips.
Yep.
You know, Audio Jungle or Premium Beat,
Yeah.
Premium Beat, and then and their download doesn't include the source
Yep.
to get back to it.
Yep.
It's just a generically named thing. So, like, where did I get this thing from? I have no idea.
I want to pay you.
Right, I want to pay you. I want to buy this clip.
Here's
And this
an
is brilliant.
Here's an example. I just shot this commercial recently, and I was playing with different pieces of the, you know, different music beds, and I like to create audition clips for my music a lot of times, so I can see, you know, try this one clip of that, and then I could swap them out here. Either way, if I use my arrow key, there's one of my clips, there's another one, and I don't know if you could see, like, can I move this out of the way here? I'm going to see if I can move this audition window. Yes. I want you to notice as right here in the URL section, that's the URL for where that audio clip is. Check it out. As I swap out the clips, notice the URL swaps
Oh man.
out. So one's from audio, one's from Premium Beat,
That's
one
awesome.
and then one's from Audio Jungle. So if I choose Audio Jungle and click done, and again I can just right click on it and got to select the clip that you're interested in retrieving. It's interesting. It just keeps disappearing. Select. Go over here. Oh,
I think
Because
it's because,
it's scrolling down a little bit.
is that what it is?
Yeah.
it's because you're further along in the timeline.
It's further
maybe.
up. It's further
And
up.
then you scroll up. No, it's in the index. You
Yeah.
got to scroll up in the index a little bit. You went past it.
Okay, there it is. Anyway, control click, and there it is. You have to click twice for some reason, and then I can go right here, and then there's my track.
Bouncy upbeat jet.
Yeah, it's great. And there's other uses for it too. Maybe you're doing a corporate video, or you're doing some sort of a video that requires some sort of like Wikipedia or some source reference. So you could put the Wikipedia link in there that's related to the graphic you're building, right?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Especially if the client says, well, where does that come from, or what does it mean, or is there proof for that, or you can add it to anything, including like a title with some a factoid. So you're doing lots of factoids and putting them over something and say, well,
Yeah.
where did that come from?
Right.
And you just go, it's already there.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
So
more
it's
and
a
more
nice
metadata.
little tip that I think I
Well,
just
and
just
actually,
learned
once
I
you
like it.
download it, you know, what you can do is actually just come right back in and then match frame, you know, back in and then open the clip in the timeline and drop the original right inside the clip in its own thing, and then it's already updated exactly as it was.
yeah.
That's great.
So that's short tip today.
No, it's very good. I think it's been a very good session for tips. I think all of them we were all like, whoa,
Yeah.
that was great. Yeah. By the way, so the name, and of course, as soon as I said, "Oh, I'll have Steve go," then I found it. It's Synaptic is the
Synaptic.
Synaptic,
Synaptic?
and the plugin is called Unveil, and they have Unveil and they have Unveil 8-channel, and I think it's not a inexpensive
What do you
plugin.
do with it?
You clean up audio, so like echoing, and so I had an event that the mic for the main person didn't work very well, so we ended up having to pull the audio from the person sitting across from them, 2 labs, 2 Omnis, and we ended up just kind of pulling that audio, from them, and so obviously it was really roomy. It was a big room, so it was really roomy and everything else, and we pulled it all back, made it more present, brought it all up, and I think the average, I would know what I'm looking at, but the average person would not know that it was cleaned up, and so it was pretty kind of magical. So
Awesome.
so anyway, so that's Synaptic, but iZotope is amazing, and but Synaptic, I think for that specialized need is pretty cool. A couple more questions here before we finish. So we've got a couple more minutes, and we're going to kind of try to move through them quickly.
Good.
So it's a little bit of the speed round here. So next one's from Roger Newport, and Roger is hold on one second here. Okay, give me 1 second. I lost Roger's question here. Hold on. Given that DaVinci Resolve is starting to become a capable NLE that could compete with Final Cut 10, and that Premiere has recently upgraded its color correction abilities, do you think Final Cut 10 needs to up its game with its built-in color correction?
I think there's room for improvement in color correction. I think there's not anyone here that would disagree with that sentiment. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Denver Riddle created his plugin. It's interesting, Adobe, as Adobe point of view. I mean, they from my point of view, looking at it, because I played it, the Lumetri is what they've actually made it much more like Lightroom. So they, in a sense, and I don't want to say dumbed down because that wouldn't be correct, but they've made it much more friendly for photographers who are already coming from Lightroom. So you might say that Adobe went the way of Apple, saying, I want to make this particular tool a lot more accessible. Even though it still has color wheels, it definitely feels more friendly if you're a Lightroom user.
Right.
So this idea that, well, it needs to be complicated to be pro there's that mean. It needs to be complicated to be pro is ridiculous.
Right.
I mean, look, I'm the first one to tell you that Resolve is an awesome program. We do training on it. It's got some amazing tools. You can do things with it that you can't do in Lumetri, and you can't certainly do in a color board. I mean, the fact that you can do individual channel color grading and affect the luminance range and curves on SAT, curves on Luma, curves on, I mean, you can go crazy in this thing. But for, again, the lion's share of what you would need to do, for a lot of people, these tools are plenty, this is enough. I mean, I color graded this commercial, I did everything in the color board, and I was happy. It's only when you need to get in, you're working with the 14-bit, 14 stops of dynamic range, or you need to really start pushing the image and pulling the image, then it makes sense. But I understand the mindset that, look, these tools will do the job, and they'll do a great job depending on what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I totally echo that. There is certainly room for improvement. I'm not the color board's biggest fan, to be perfectly honest. There's some severe limitations. That said, Color Finale is a huge improvement, and we just did a Mac Break Studio today, and you can actually do power windows right in Final Cut at this point. If you combine SliceX and Color Finale, I think both of those plugins combine to allow you basically to do exactly what you might do in Resolve for the most part, and you combine that with curves and the vector grading and writing Color Finale. And I was a professional colorist back when I was still doing a lot of that stuff, and for 85% of what I would want to do, I can do, probably it's up to 90 now. I can do all of that right in Final Cut with the right tools. And if you add up the total cost of ownership for some of this, a Resolve dongle is $1,000 for the full version of Resolve. Final Cut 10 is $300. Another $50 for motion, another $50 for compressor, another $100 for color finale, and another $100 and change for Slice X. And then you throw in, you have enough money to get the light version of Isotope, which has the dialogue denoiser and some of that stuff. For all of that stuff, you get this entire suite of tools. For 3 years of Adobe Cloud subscription, I think that's about $1,800. So if you want to add value, I mean, in terms of, you know, dollar for dollar money and what you actually really need to do in a given point in turn, yes, the color board has a significant amount of room for improvement, but when you look at total cost of ownership, there's a lot of value in Final Cut 10 and the associated tools, and you determine the ones that you need based on what you need to do.
Absolutely. That's great. All right, next question here is from Robert Cyril from Wilmington, North Carolina. Does it make sense to keep camera native files after they've been transcoded into Final Cut 10?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's
Keep
your
native all the
archive.
time, right?
No, I mean, certainly the footprint of transcoded material, if we're talking optimized, not proxy, is anywhere from 2 to 16 times the size of your original. So the thing is, do I really want to keep all that huge, those huge files around? That's really the essence of the question. When you're ready to archive and put it on the shelf, certainly not. I mean, that's the reason why you keep your original media, because it's the original media. And you can always retranscode from the original media. You can't transcode something that's been transcoded. And why have, you know, a 140 terabyte drive with all this transcoded media? Pitch it, dump it, and then just, you always have your original media as a starting place. And even if you have to render, you have to render. But I say flat out, never, ever get rid of your original media. There you go.
Well, we're all going to agree with that.
That's
all right.
that.
Next. All right. The next one is from Kenneth Stevenson. And he said, when will Final Cut 10 get a good solution for network collaboration? According to someone who must not be named, Apple has been working on that for a while.
About 3:15 this afternoon. The question was when, right?
Yeah.
No, we don't know.
We don't know. All right. We don't know.
Right.
Sorry.
Yep, okay.
And we could have a big discussion about what it can already do, but we already had that discussion.
We had that discussion
earlier
in the
go
show.
back to the
This
stream.
question
Bang your
may have
heads
happened
on
before
the
the stream.
Yeah,
so
go back to the stream.
Go back to the stream. There we go. So next question. I read some comments Alex made about some bugs in the 3D text. Have they been fixed? This is from Ken in Kiyabu.
Bugs in 3D text.
I read some comments.
read some-
There's some
did you make
bugs
those, or did I make the comments? See, the problem is you have to say Alex G or Alex L.
Yeah.
I didn't make any comments then that I've written, I think.
I think I'm trying to remember what I must have tweeted about something to do with the keyframing. In other words, when you if you published the X, Y, and Z coordinates and then you keyframe sometimes, the X, Y, and Z coordinates as they appear in Final Cut seem to be quite strange compared with real X, Y, and Z coordinates. Have you noticed that where you've been playing with it, or have you been okay with your published coordinates?
Generally been okay with it. My issue more is with the keyframing capabilities in Final Cut versus Motion, because Final Cut allows you to ease position, but it doesn't allow you to ease rotation.
Yeah.
Please.
So I don't think, and the answer is I can't remember what the bug is. Sadly, it's
Well, it's not been getting in your way.
But yeah, it was more that was probably just doing investigating 3D text, and I don't think that's been changed in the 10.2.1 update, because I think we would have made more of a big deal out of it. Sorry, I haven't been keeping up with that.
Next question is from Eric, and I'm going to hack this up. It's I think it's Bajil from Holland. And he said, if you could bring one feature from Premiere or Avid to Final Cut 10, what would it be?
Bin locking.
Bin locking, okay.
Workspaces.
Workspaces.
Yeah, I really think it's time for there to be able to save layouts. That, I mean, Jeff Greenberg at the summit, he had a tip show, and he showed this $30 plugin called Keyboard Maestro that you can. It's an app that runs in here, and then basically you tap a key, and it'll reconfigure Final Cut Pro's workspace based on keystrokes. But I thought that was an expensive option for something that should be built into the app.
Got it?
I don't use this app, so
What would I like an interesting thing that I wouldn't necessarily use myself, but I think would be useful for general workflow is the ability to put special panels like Premiere has. Be able to put that in Final Cut Pro so that you've actually got a workflow in which metadata or something connected to a wider organization production database is available in Final Cut Pro, so you can see maybe in the case of Premiere you can make it so you've used this amount of storage on your system. You're running out of footage to actually help with shot ratios, production ratios and stuff like that. And which is, you start off with the commissioning editor or the person who commissioned the TV show said, this is how much footage you're allowed. And you can see the percentage go down. You can do that in Premiere. And I think that's really what I'm saying is that's giving third parties access to the UI within Final Cut when you're using it, which is effectively what Adobe have done with that in Premiere with their panel store.
And I see a better active connection between Final Cut and Motion for me. A lot of people that you see using Premiere are using it because they can connect it so seamlessly to After Effects.
Although,
for instance.
because at the show, West Plate, the Automatic Duck,
Yeah.
well, Automatic Duck, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, he showed his new preview of Final Cut to After Effects. So you'll be able to send all your timeline over to After Effects, all your layers will show.
And that's great, but I'm interested in just a tighter, an active connection with Motion, where I have in the old days.
Oh, I see. You want round trip. It was
I want round
sitting
trip.
there,
Send to
sitting there.
Motion,
Oh
not
yeah,
just
that
send
was one of
from.
my top 10.
And have it be an active connection so that I'm working in Motion on it and
it's updating
Yeah.
Final Cut
it's
in the
updating
timeline.
Final Cut in the timeline.
Like
It used to do that.
like
Like you
wanna
say that so
say-
wistfully.
like you used to be able to do between Motion and After Effects. I want to do some really cool particles that After Effects are a bit fiddly to do and you do in Motion, you go, hey,
You could
do
put the
some
Motion
really
project
cool
right in.
particles,
Right, yeah.
and then there would be a live layer, and you can open up that layer that was in After Effects, change it in Motion, and then change it back again, and instantly the After Effects is improved. So that link was better.
I also want script sync, by the way. I think that, so.
You like
Expressions. Anyway, so, all right. So here we go. Next one's from Andy Seal, and it says, "I'm late arriving, so pleased to show. So pleased you're showing Frame.io. I use it all the time. From the launch, I have great feedback from colleagues, and that's in the construction industry. So anyway,
That's really good.
quote
It's-
there.
The idea of Final Cut being used by people who don't actually make feature films and movies is really important for the wider Apple, I think. That
Well,
Final-
and I think that's what's actually happening. I mean, I think that when people talk to me about, well, who's using Final Cut, I'm like, well, everyone outside of LA and New York. And I mean, because the thing is, I think it really is like this huge pyramid, and then one top % is using something else, and that just keeps on getting smaller, and then the rest of this just keeps on getting bigger, because when you look at corporate video, when you look at EDU video, those are the explosive areas when it comes to long-term growth of video production.
I mean, even Premiere is going after that because they've got things like obviously designed for law enforcement with their long time remapping things, and it seems to be like, if you're doing a court case and you were a law enforcement person, then you use Premiere in order to prepare your videos. But obviously, I imagine that people are using Final Cut to do those kind of things. In other words, using video to actually get a task done as opposed to entertain people or to inform people. But
Right. In Premiere, they have the thing called the new feature called Morph Cut, where you have an interview, you chop it out, it doesn't look like it analyzes the head position and everything, and it morphs.
It's pretty cool.
It is.
Although T. Payton, who wrote in, has a great tip online. You can look up on how to do that in Final Cut using optical flow to create a perfect morph cut on somebody speaking where there's a
all right,
jump cut.
I'll have to watch that.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch that.
Yeah. Like, ooh,
That's good.
That looks good. All right, we're going to do 2 more questions.
That's funny.
Any tip on how to apply a random Ken Burns effect on a series of images in the timeline in Final Cut 10 so that it'll be less work to adjust the individual clips?
Sure, just throw them all into iMovie, or throw them all into Photo. I don't know if Photos will now, the new Photos app, because it
I
used to be in
haven't even played
iPhoto.
You just throw them all in.
just
Give it a
say
song.
randomize each one, done.
But I think this is random moves that the person wanted. So it's a matter of making a plugin and put the randomizer in there, and they have to click randomize on each one, and then you can make it do random Ken Burns moves.
But that's
on each
essentially
clip.
what iPhoto would do.
Oh,
if you
right.
just randomly do random Ken Burn moves on photo to photo, and you just
Oh,
throw them
I-
and you're done.
I haven't seen that.
Okay, and
There's actually a new plugin too from Luca Visual Effects. It's the shuffle transitions. Is what we're talking about, where you can do all kinds of like, and if you extend it out, they can be longer. Where it's going to throw 5 clips in a sequence and have them go up, down, left, right, or push in and zoom in. So it's an interesting transition. I guess it might depend on how long, but you just select your drop zone and it's going to do something different to each clip. So you might want to give Luca Shuffle a trial on FX Factory.
Definitely. And the last one is from Mike Matzdorf. He said,
Is it Mike Matzdorf?
Mike.
We
he
miss
said,
him.
I miss you guys.
Thank
Great
you.
show. We miss you too.
No, but
We miss you too."
for me, I say thank you.
Yeah.
Because he was going to be here, and it's like, oh no, I don't miss. No, I do miss him. I miss you, Mike. Sorry.
There we go.
That's
That's a
Mike's,
good.
is that Mike's chair right there?
Yeah, he's sitting in his.
Oh, he's coming. He's coming. No,
Yeah,
no.
exactly. So anyway, I think that's a good way to end it. If we haven't answered these, we'll try to go through some more of the questions after the show and answer some of them over text and so on and so forth. So stay tuned for that. Alex, where can people find you on the web?
I spend most of my time on Twitter, so even if you don't like it, I'm sorry. But anyway, I try and make it bearable. ALEX, the number 4, the letter D. Alex4D is what I'm known as. Alex, and also alex4d.com, where I blog. And Apple linked to my blog saying it's about Final Cut Pro 10 and the post-production ecosystem. And I thought, hey, I'll take that. And then I took their description of my thing and put it on my own blog. So yeah, that sounds quite cool. And some free plugins and stuff like that. So that's where you can find me.
Great. Sam, where can people find you?
So I am for Final Cut 10 workflow and integration. That is FCP Works. If you're interested in group workflow on the server side, that is not strictly Final Cut 10, but we focus on the VFX, Final Cut 10, mixed environments, Windows, Linux, and of course the Mac. That is LumaForge, and that's the share station. And then if you're into community-funded independent film, that is WeMakeMovies.org, and that is where I make movies. So that's me.
Mark, where can people find you?
Twitter at MarkSpen, MarkSpen, and then get on the Ripple mailing list, rippletraining.com, and then you'll find out all about all our content is coming out.
Steve?
Twitter at Ripple Training, and then rippletraining.com.
There you have it. I'm Alex Lindsay. You can find me at Alex Lindsay on Twitter. And thank you so much for watching the Final Cut Pro 10 virtual user group number 6. We will do another one when we find it convenient.
That's honest.
It's like, I would love to say we're going to come back next month, but it's really like, hey,
my God.
we're all in town. Let's have another one of these. So sometimes it'll become more formal, but right now we're just having a good time figuring it out. And so anyway, we will hopefully see you relatively soon. Probably one more time in our current studio, and then we're going to be moving studios, which will look exactly the same to you because it's all black. So, but to us, they'll probably look exactly the same. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon.